My name is Charles Harold with the Veterans History Project. Today is August 28th, 2005. I'm here in Fredericksburg, Virginia with Mr. Walker. Mr. Walker, for the record, would you please state your full name?
Robert Albert Walker.
And what is your current address?
9 Devonshire Drive, Fredericksburg.
Where were you born, Mr. Walker?
Pomeroy, Ohio.
And when?
5 November 1924.
What branch of service were you in World War II?
Marines.
Can you recall the company that you were in?
I think it was H&S Company, or Headquarters Company, I guess it was.
What regiment?
The 24th Regiment.
And what division?
4th Marine Division.
During World War II, what was your highest rank?
PFC.
Did you serve in other wars besides World War II?
Oh yeah, Korea and Vietnam.
Did you retire from the Marines?
Yes.
What did you retire as?
As a colonel.
In Korea, what was your highest rank?
In Korea, I was a captain.
And in Vietnam?
In Vietnam, I was a major.
During World War II, what campaign did you were you involved with?
Well, Iwo Jima was the only one I got involved in.
We'll talk more about Korea and Vietnam later.
Okay.
I'd like to ask you, during World War II, were you ever wounded?
No, I was not.
Were you ever a prisoner of war?
No.
And during World War II, were you awarded any medals?
Well, I just was awarded the, no medals, I don't think, just the standard.
Battle stars?
Yeah. Nothing, no, I didn't make any awards.
I'd like to...
Didn't even make a Purple Heart, man, I tell you.
I'd like to drop back a little bit and talk about growing up. You said you were from Ohio. Do you recall how life was before the Great Depression for your family?
Southern Ohio. No, I was growing up right during the Depression, and my father, very fortunately, was working as a salesman, grocery salesman, and was able to, provide for everybody.
What was his name?
John Herbert Walker. John Herbert Walker. And he had worked on a railroad before that, but he got a job as a salesman for a grocery company, Midland Grocery Company there in Portsmouth, Ohio. And we lived in Portsmouth for a while. And then his territory, they moved him to a territory up there in Wellston, Ohio, which is up further north, near Chillicothe, Ohio. And that's where we lived, Wellston, Ohio, for the next... Well, I grew up in Wellston, Ohio, basically.
Well, what's your mom's name?
Helen Walker.
Was she around while you were growing up?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
What did she do for a job?
Nothing. She was a housewife. She was a housewife.
So that's a big job.
In those days, they didn't have a car either, so you walked to the store and all that. So I walked to the store.
Were you actually out in a country boy, or were you?
Yeah, we were out on the edge of town, and so we had about 2 acres, which we farmed, and we had a huge pasture where we kept a horse, and my sister loved horseback riding, and I didn't mind it, but I wasn't a big one on horseback riding, but she loved horses, and my dad bought her a horse. So we had a big pasture right down there with big ponds, good fishing. And it was just down the hill. I mean, I just went down the hill and we could go fishing. My mother liked to fish too, and she used to take me down there. We used to go fishing.
What was her name?
Helen Walker.
Helen.
Yeah.
How many other brothers and sisters did you have?
I just have one sister, Emmeline, and she's 1.5 years younger than I am.
So you were close in age?
Yes.
Did you do a lot of things together?
No.
No?
No. Oh no! She did her thing and I did mine. We did not get along all that well together.
You mentioned there was a lake nearby. Were you a real fisherman?
These were huge ponds where we went fishing right down over the hill, down into this big pasture. And they had a lot of good fish in there. We went fishing down there. but we had a big lake, Lake Alma, about 3 miles out, further out, big lake. And that was good fishing out there too, and we could walk out to that. That was about 3 or 4 miles walk. In those days you walked, you know.
Your dad walk with you?
No, Dad was not a fisherman. He did not like to fish. My mother did, but my friend that lived up the way from me, Joe Webb, he was about a year younger than I was, and we did just about everything together. We'd go fishing together, and we played ball together. We had sandlot baseball games going, and we had a guy that came down and coached us for baseball and softball. And we all liked softball or baseball rather in those days, basically.
Were you a camper?
No, I wasn't a camper. That's funny. I wasn't.
How about Boy Scouts?
Boy Scouts, yes. I belonged to the Boy Scouts for a number of years. And we went to Boy Scout camp and things like that too. Yeah, right there in southern Ohio. So.
Did the Depression hit your family hard?
Don't think so. We had a lot of people that lived around us that were hit very hard, and they were having a lot of trouble. And we used to sometimes, we had people come by to ask for food, you know, that hobos, because the railroad went right through our hometown. We had the guys come by and ask for food in those days because they just didn't have it, you know, in those days.
Your dad stayed employed?
My dad stayed employed, yeah, thank God.
Did your grandparents and...
my grandfather lived with us because my grandmother died when I was about 5 years old, and he came to live with us, and he was a master carpenter. He had all of the tools of the trade. He had the lathe, the bandsaw, ripsaw, and he had it all in his shop, which he kept locked, but he told me and showed me how to use all that stuff. Thank God. And so he worked throughout the area as a carpenter for all kinds of things. He did all kinds of carpenter work. And he worked in the foundry before that, where he learned an awful lot of this stuff, I think. Because he could build just about anything. He built a chessboard out of wood. It was just beautiful, about this big a square, you know, with wooden squares, and it really beautiful. He was really a good carpenter. So I learned a lot from him.
Did you?
My other grandfather worked on a railroad. He was a telegrapher because he had his leg cut off when he was about 21 years old, a brakeman, and fell off, you know, and got his leg cut off, and it was cut off above the knee. And he had a wooden leg, and he used to walk about a mile to work every day down to his office as a telegrapher at the railroad station. And he had 3 boys. They had 3 boys, my uncles, who worked in the area. 2 of them were railroad engineers, ended up being engineers, and the other one worked at a paper factory over in Chillicothe, Ohio.
If you had to characterize you as a father's boy, mama's boy, granddaddy's boy, what were you? Who did you look toward as constant?
More like a mother's boy, because she was home all the time, and she kept an eye on everything that I did. And she knew when I was starting to get into trouble, and she was able to, hey, you know, square me away in no way at all. Boy, she used to. When I was young, when I was 5 or 6 years old, and she'd let me go up the street to visit with some of my friends, and she'd tell me to get home. If I didn't get home, she'd come up the street and she'd be taking a switch. She'd be taking a limb off a tree and taking the leaves off of it, and she'd switch me all the way home, because she was young. She was very young, and she was a good-looking woman, and but she was very athletic. She could do all kinds of things. So.
Was your dad young also?
He was overweight most of my life, and most of his life, and he loved beer. Even though he was a salesman, he was a grocery salesman, but he went to all of the damn stores, you know, and he'd stop in, and particularly to the we had what did you call them? Pool rooms, you know. We had 2 of them downtown in our small town of Wellston. And they played cards down there, and they played pool. And he would go down there and play cards with, sometimes his brothers lived there in town, and they'd all play pinochle. They were big pinochle people. And people would stand around and watch them play because they were so damn good. They never played pool, they just played cards. They used to get around the card tables and play cards. But boy, they drank a lot of beer.
Was he a...
Loved beer. They're German. He was a German, and my grandfather on his side was German. And they loved their beer.
immigrant German?
No, I don't think so. No, they'd been there for, I guess maybe maybe their parents had come over, I don't know. But I just knew them, and that was my grandparents on my father's side. My grandparent on my mother's side did not drink and did not look with favor upon people who drank either.
Was your dad in the First War?
No, he was not. He was too young, I guess, for the first war. I think. I believe that was the reason. Because he wasn't that old, and my dad and mother were not that old. When they got married young, and because mother was, I can remember mother was really very full of fire and vinegar. She was really young and good looking.
Did they live a long time?
Yeah, Dad went at about, I think he went at about 70, and then my mother lived till 90-some, and she moved out to Arizona with my daughter, who had moved out there, and lived the last few years of her life out there in Arizona. But she was a big flower person, and she had beautiful flower gardens. They were so beautiful that people came up from all over town to come down to see her flower gardens. So she liked flowers. You
mentioned that the railroad went through your town. Did you watch the trains come in and out?
Oh, hell yes.
Were you a train boy?
I worked on a railroad when I was young. I worked on a railroad right there in my hometown in Wellston. That was a branch that went through Wellston. The main line went from Cincinnati, or it went from D.C., Washington, D.C. to St. Louis, and went right through 3 miles north of our town, where the main line, the B&O, went through there. And then I went to work at right there in my hometown as a clerk. What do you call them? I have to go down and check all the cars and record all the numbers and everything so they can make up the trains. Can't remember what they called me. And then later on, after I got out of high school, I went to work in right near Cincinnati, Ohio, Hamilton, Ohio. And I went to work doing the same thing there on a railroad there until the war broke out. And then finally I decided that I didn't want to be caught up into the Army. So I said, I will join the Marine Corps, and I joined the Marine Corps in 1943 then.
Before we get into the war, can you tell me about your school and your schooling? My
school, the grade school was, well, of course, I was out of school I wasn't really. In the 4th grade is when they discovered I had rheumatic fever and put me to bed for a year. And the teacher came to the house to teach me and give me my lessons in those days. That was really nice. And so I did not miss anything by not going to school. She came out there, and I went through the 4th grade just like anybody else, basically. But I stayed in bed that whole damn year, and boy, I'm telling you, that hurt, because all my buddies were out having a good time, and I'm just in bed. But that worked. Apparently my bad valve of the heart healed itself, and it was a new doctor who had come to town, and he's the one who prescribed putting me to bed, and that worked. That was the 4th grade when I was doing that. But later on is when I went. I always liked the railroad. I wanted to be an engineer, like my uncles, and but I went to work as a crew caller and a yard clerk, they called them in those days.
During high school, how far did you get in high school?
Oh, I went through high school.
What was your thing? Did you have a particular place that you liked in high school?
I liked, well, I was interested in science. We had general science, and then I've forgotten what else, and chemistry. And I liked math. Hated English, but thank God I took English, and boy, I really used it later on in life when I was, you know, up as a major and a lieutenant colonel. You really had to keep an eye on things because the guys didn't know how to write. So, but it helped me out. That helped me out an awful lot. English, you have to have. It's like I tell my granddaughter who just went up to BMI, said, and she's talking about English. I said, you've got to learn that English. I know you don't like it, but you've got to learn it. You have to know it. You'll never get along very well in life if you don't know English.
Who was your best friend in high school?
A guy named Tom Lockard, Tom Lockard and Glenn Boggs. Glenn died earlier in life, but Tom Lockard is still living in Wellston, Ohio, which is where I grew up. And he was a guy that was most unlikely. We all three of us wanted to be aviators in high school. We talked about getting into aviation. But Tom Lockard was big. He was probably 250 pounds all the way through high school. He was a big football player. And we said, hell, he'll never get into aviation because he's too damn big, too fat. And I mean, Glenn Boggs, my other good friend, got into aviation, but he ended up being a mechanic. But Tom got into aviation later on during World War II and became a B-24 pilot. So I talk to him every now and then. He's in Wellston, and he's an insurance salesman and real estate dealer there in Wellston. So.
Did any of your high school friends go off to World War II and didn't come back?
That's a good question. I don't really know, because I never came back. Well, I did come back to Wellston. What the hell's the matter with me? I did come back. But I went to college, and Tom went to college at Ohio State. I did too, and another good friend of mine went to college there at Ohio State. I think they all finished, but I, after 2 years, had the opportunity to go into flight training, and I went to Pensicola and went through flight training.
But that's after the war.
That was after the war.
As a kid, did you have pets around your home?
Oh my goodness, yes, we always did. We always had dogs and cats. Dogs and cats. No cows, just the horse and dogs and cats. We always had a dog or two and several cats around. Because we were at the edge of town, and we had about, like I say, about 2 acres, which we farmed. And, oh God, worked my fanny off out there, hoeing weeds in the corn patch and the potato patch and the tomato patches.
Were these things sold at the store that your dad worked for?
I don't think so. We canned most everything that we had left over, that we had too much of.
What store did your dad work for?
He worked for the Midland Grocery Company. It was from Portsmouth, Ohio, which is about 50 miles south of where Wellston is, down on the river.
During the Great Depression, did you know anybody who worked for the WPA or the CCC?
Oh my goodness, yeah. We had all kinds of people there in my hometown that worked for WPA, yeah.
Did your father ever get laid off, or did
No,
you
he
apply?
he never got laid off.
Did you
because
apply?
everybody needed groceries, I guess, and so he never got laid off.
Did you apply to work for the CCC as you were getting older?
No. As a matter of fact, I remember the CCC, but I never got involved in that at all.
Did you listen to the radio as a kid?
Oh my goodness, yeah. We listened to all those damn radio programs in those days. Well, with Lum and Abner and what was all those different shows that they had in those days. Yeah, radio was big, and in fact, I used to like country western music back in those days. We used to have a lot of that in southern Ohio because we're right next to Kentucky and West Virginia. And so we had lots of good old music, and we had all those programs in those days, Low and Abner, and what was the other one?
Did you listen to the Lone Ranger?
And the Lone Ranger, oh yeah.
Tell me about your family politically. Did they talk about politics as you were growing up much?
No, they did not talk about politics. That's now that you mention it, they certainly didn't. Huh. But they were basically Republicans. I know that, but I think my grandfather on my mother's side was a Democrat. But anyway, they didn't talk that much about it.
Did you listen to the radio when the fireside chats of FDR was going on?
I remember those, and I don't remember how much I listened to them at all, whether I did or not. But I know that my folks did. Yeah. Boy, you remember a lot there. I don't know.
When Adolf Hitler was coming to power in the 1930s and finally went to war in 1939, were you aware of the evil of Nazism spreading across Europe?
Somewhat, you know. We didn't know that much about it, but we did know that it apparently there was a lot of evil going on over there, and they were having problems with the Jews, and they were they were killing all the Jews and everything like that, and chasing them out of there. I remember a little bit about that. Not that much, though. It doesn't seem to me like there was that much about it.
How about the Japs and what they were doing over in China?
I can remember we did hear and read about what they were doing in China, and it really made everybody upset, you know.
Because you were starting high school about the time.
Yeah.
Do you
Matter of fact, the war started. When was it? They hit Pearl Harbor, and I was trying to remember whether I was. That was 1941. 41. I was still in high school. I was working as an usher, or as an assistant manager at one of the movie houses. We had 3 movie houses in town, and I can remember I was working there on the Sunday that we got the word about Pearl Harbor, and I was walking home from somehow or another I'd gotten the word about it, and I was all upset about it. Wild.
Had you ever heard of Pearl Harbor before?
Oh yeah, I was aware of it. I don't know why, but just because of what I'd studied in school, I'm sure.
Well, 1941, you're 14 or 15 years old. Just turned.
Well, I was 16, probably.
16. Did you know anybody who immediately quit school and headed off to war?
No, I don't believe so. I don't remember that anybody did. One of my good friends, Albert Sadler, I was trying to remember when I think he waited till he graduated and he got into the Marine Corps right after high school.
What was the name of your high school anyway?
Wellston High School.
Wellston High School. I suppose as soon as the war started, your teacher started telling you about where Pearl Harbor was and things like that.
I'm sure, yeah.
Do you recall any of the discussions in school about the war?
I don't remember anything about that. Of course, and I graduated in 1942. No.
During that first year of the war, did you help with any scrap drives or collection of stuff?
I don't think so. I don't remember being involved in anything like that. Like I say, when I graduated from high school in 42, I went to work in Hamilton, Ohio, which is just north of Cincinnati, Ohio, and working on the railroad over there.
Did you have to register for the draft?
No. I don't. Well, yes, I did. Yeah, I did have to register for the draft, right. And that's when I started thinking about, hey, I don't want to get into the Army. I'm going to join the Marine Corps. And that's when I decided to join the Marine Corps in March of 1943.
So why the Marines instead of the Navy or Air Force?
I don't know. I always had a spot in my heart for the Marines when I was growing up. For some reason or another, there were things about the Marines that I had read, I guess, and I decided that that's what I wanted to be.
You mentioned you signed up. Where did you have to go to sign up?
Cincinnati, Ohio, right? And that was only, of course, I worked on a railroad, and I can catch the train for free down to Cincinnati, which was 30 miles away, and signed up there.
How long was it from the time you signed up to when you had to report?
Wow, I don't remember.
Was it months or more like just a week or two?
I was probably a month or two. It wasn't that long, I don't think. That's interesting. I cannot remember. I signed up and I can't remember. I don't think it was very long.
Did you have any commitments, like girlfriends or anything, in your local town?
No, I didn't. No, I was working in Hamilton, Ohio, and I had no commitments there at all. I had in my hometown of Wellston, I had a couple of girlfriends there, you know, that followed me all the way through the war, I guess you might say.
By the time of 1943 rolls around, were you living on your own?
Oh yes, I was. I was living at a home, and you know, in a spare bedroom. That's where I slept, and I didn't get food there, but that was my place I stayed, you know, and went to work from there. I walked to work. It was walking to work down the railroad track. I was close by.
Is that what you had always wanted to do, is be the railroad man?
I always wanted to be a railroader. I wanted to be a railroad engineer. And back in those days, it was all steam. And I loved those steam engines, and I wanted to be an engineer.
How far in the railroad industry did you climb the ladder? Was it just...
I didn't. I just ended up being a yard clerk and a crew caller. That's all. And but that time, you know, the war, I just went ahead and signed up into the Marine Corps.
Where did you end up having to report the first day of the Marines?
Well, from Cincinnati, they sent me by train to Parris Island.
How was when you got off the train / bus at Parris Island?
Yeah.
What went through your mind?
Well, as we were driving into Parris Island, we kept getting all these, oh, you'll be sorry, things from the guys yelling at us as we were going in. Because, boy, I tell you, boot camp there was something else in those days.
Was there anybody else on the bus that you knew?
One guy I got to know who was from, and as a matter of fact, I ought to try to find out if he's still living. He lived there in, where the heck did he live? I think he lived right there in Hamilton, Ohio, which is where I was living, where I was working, Hamilton, Ohio. And he went with me, and we both went through training at Parris Island down there, but I don't know whatever happened to him. I really don't. I think he went into cook and baker school. I'm not sure. But I never ran into him again.
So you got off the bus at Parris Island, and what did the instructors do to you?
You know, they ran us through the mill, boy. I tell you, they had to get us our clothes, get us suited up, you know, and our rifles and all that, and then we drilled day in and day out, and then of course later on during the whole thing, we went out to the rifle range for the last 3 weeks of I think it was about 6 weeks all told. I went out to the rifle range to learn how to shoot the rifle. Well, I learned how to shoot the rifle long before I ever got in the Marine Corps, but because I lived out in the country, that's where I had to learn to do that. And so I didn't have any trouble shooting expert with that damn M1. Boy, that bear, you can pop that right into a small target 500 yards away. That's an accurate piece of gear, that thing, yes. Loved it.
So you excelled with rifles?
Oh yeah.
How about other equipment? Did they train you with it?
Yeah, we had to learn how to the 45 pistol, which I never ever used again, because they went to the carbines, you know, the M1 carbine during World War II to replace the pistol. For some reason, I don't know why. I guess they thought it was more accurate.
How about any heavy equipment? Heavy machine guns, artillery?
No, I didn't get into that. I was just I was a radio operator. They sent me to radio operator school. From Parris Island, I went to Camp Lejune, and the first thing they did was, hey man, I had taken a test, and they said, we're going to send you to radio operator school, which they did. And I spent the next 6 weeks or more going through radio operator school and learning how to be a high-speed radio operator. I had to learn 20 words a minute of the Morse code by hand, and then that's about as fast as you can go by hand. So then I had to learn how to use the typewriter, and I'd never taken typing in high school like a lot of kids did. So, but they had the books and the typewriters, and you were expected to learn how to use the typewriter. And from there, I could do Morse code at 45 words a minute. So I was a radio operator, and we spent week upon weeks out in the boondocks with portable radios, learning how to use them, and working back and forth with radios out there. So that's why I ended up being a radio operator in the 4th Marine Division.
Carrying a radio on your back, was it difficult?
No, you carried it on your chest. You had your pack on your back. You had about a 70-pound pack or so on your back. You had your damn rifle, your belt with your ammo, and your canteen, and your bayonet, and all of that jazz. And then you had a 35, 40-pound, well, most of them weighed 35 to 45 pounds. You had some portable ones of 45 pounds, some that were 2 or 3 pieces that went together for the Morse code stuff. And you had to carry that, plus an antenna. And so we were out in the boondocks for weeks on end learning how to use those things. And so when I finished up, where did I go from there? They decided that I needed to learn how to be a technician, radio technician. So they sent me to school at Grove City, Pennsylvania to learn basic electronics. And then, in fact, I went to Chicago for a school. What was it? What's the name of that school up there I went to learn electronics, basically. And then they sent me to San Francisco to Treasure Island, where a big Navy base there, to learn how to be a technician. They wanted us to be radar technicians, because radar was getting to be the big thing then. Well, by that time it was getting down. It was about 1945 or so, and while I was learning a hell of a lot, I said, "Hell, we're going to miss the war," you know. Myself and several of the other guys, and say we're gonna miss out on the damn war. So we decided to poop out on the school. So we dropped out of the school, and man, they shipped us right down to Camp Pendleton, and where I got into the training with the radio, just the portable radios like I'd been using before. And from there, they sent me out to Hawaii to the 4th Marine Division.
So the reason why you ended up going to combat is because you wanted to.
I wanted to. Yeah, I was afraid I was going to miss out on it.
Did you feel invincible?
I don't know. We just felt like we were going to miss the war. We had to get out there, so I got out there all right. Boy, I trained a little bit at Camp Pendleton, and next thing I know, they had me over at Maui in Hawaii with the 4th Marine Division. And from there, we got aboard ship and headed out across the Pacific and stepped off at Iwo Jima.
You didn't stop anywhere else?
No. No, we were aboard ship. That's why my wife was always saying, I want to go on a cruise. I said, I don't want to go on a cruise. I'm sick and tired of floating around on those damn boats for days and months on end.
Do you recall the name of the boat you took?
Oh, hell no, I can't remember. I was on a number of boats out there, you know, ships out there, but I don't remember the name. No, I can't remember the names.
So when you were in Hawaii preparing for an invasion, what was your job?
I was a radio operator, and we marched around all over the damn countryside. In fact, we went up to Haleakala on Maui and marched all the way, and walked all the way across that. If you've ever been there. Have you ever been to Hawaii? It's just beautiful. But boy, it's quite an experience. But anyway, Maui was, of course, it's a beautiful island. It's one of the more, I think it's one of the more beautiful islands out there. And we would sometimes catch a truck, one of the trucks, and they'd take us into downtown Wailuku and Kaului, and go to the USOs down there, and some of us go to the restaurants down there, you know, and then bring us back later on in the evening. But it was quite a place, and with beaches, we used to get to the beaches, but we used to make landings too, practice landings on the beaches there with everything. So later on, they put us aboard ship, and they gave us alohas or whatever, going away, and off we went and spent at least weeks. I've forgotten how many weeks aboard ship, and we finally all met together off Iwo Jima.
Can you tell me, while you were in Hawaii, did you see any USO shows with big entertainment?
We had some, yes, at Camp Maui. We had a number of shows go through there, and I don't remember seeing any spectacular shows, you know, like Bob Hope or anybody like that. But we did have USO shows come through, and we did have the singers and the dancers and things like that.
Was there anybody in your team or squad that you became very close to in those weeks on?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we lived in tents on Maui, and we got to know each other fairly well, and there were probably 6. No, we didn't know really anything about it other than the fact it was an atomic bomb we heard, you know, just what we heard and read.
Now that you're an older man and you know what atomic weapons are,
yeah.
There are some people who criticize the United States.
Oh. That is the biggest bunch of barf I ever did here. If it hadn't dropped those 2 bombs up there, we'd still be fighting those damn Japanese. I swear. And they are vicious. They are really vicious. And that was one of the smartest, best things that ever happened to us, those 2 bombs. I know we killed a lot of people, but they would have killed a lot of people too if we would try to gone ashore there in Japan. The hard way. No way. Boy, thank God for those 2 bombs. I don't have any problems about that. I hate those. I mean, in those days I hated the Japanese, and of course later on I went back to Japan and I loved the Japanese. They were just as nice as could be. You know, they can really turn around.
So you really didn't harbor any hatred for them even after the war?
Oh no. We went back. I did tours after I got into aviation, and I did several tours in Japan, and we enjoyed Japan. We just had a great time there, and the people were great. It's amazing how the military that they had were just animals, and but the rest of the Japanese people were just as lovely people. They were just wonderful people. Everybody loved him.
You said you were in China. What was your job there?
I was still a radio operator, and high-speed radio operator, and had my what do you call it? My duties as going for 8 hours on, 8 hours off, or whatever, as a radio operator, and so I got to see a lot of. Tsingtao was an interesting place to be.
When did you get word that you would come home?
God, I don't remember. You know, that's interesting. I don't remember. They sent me home And I don't even remember how I came home, whether it was by air or by ship. And I got to the West Coast, and they shipped me to, oh shoot, what is it there in Chicago? The big Navy base there.
Great Lakes?
Great Lakes, where I was discharged in April of 1946.
What happened then? Where'd you go?
Well, I went home. Of course, I wasn't far from home, from Chicago. Went home and decided to sign up, because that was in March. And then I went home, and I don't know what I did that summer. I remember I did some house painting for my grandfolks' house, and just milled around, having a good time, drinking beer, having a good time with all the buddies that I knew that were back, and then signed up for school at Ohio State. And
Let's stop there for a moment.
I went to college. Okay, you ready? Ready?
Yeah.
I signed up Ohio State University in 1946 to go to college and electrical engineering, and went for 2 years. And then I learned that I think as a matter of fact, I think I was working on a railroad in the summertime as a clerk in between sessions at Ohio State. I learned that the Navy had opened up the flight training program again for those that have at least 2 years of college. And so I had when I had 2 years of college, I went down to Cincinnati to see if I could pass the exams to get in to flight test, or flight school. And sure enough, I was surprised that I passed the physical, because I'd had that trouble when I was a kid with rheumatic fever with my heart. I passed the flight physical, and went. Next thing I know, I was on the way to Pensicola, Florida, and went through flight school in 1948 through 1950. And I got my wings and commission in 1950, June of 1950. And I got commissioned as a second lieutenant, and was assigned to Cherry Point, North Carolina, the Marine Corps Air Station, to my first squadron, which was a Corsair squadron.
You remember the name of the squadron?
Yeah, 223, VMF 223. A big wartime squadron. And I was flying Corsairs there for several months, and then that was at a time when we were getting into jets. And we got some of the first jets, the Banshees and the Panther Jets. And our squadron got the Panther Jets, the F9, F2 Panther Jets, straight wing jet, and I got trained in that, and I had not been. I'd gotten about maybe 100 hours or so in the F9, and of course Korea was going on, and I was a second. Well, no, I was a captain. Was I a captain? No, I was a second lieutenant. Yeah, I was a second lieutenant. And I had time in the F9, and so they sent me to Korea to an F9 squadron over there.
You remember the name of the squadron there?
Yeah, it was 311, VMF 311, at Pusan, was it Pusan? K3.
Oh, I interviewed a man who was a K3.
K3, Korea, yeah. What was he doing there?
But he was working on the airplanes.
Airplane mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I flew 80 some missions in the F9, and like I say, I think I was better off on the ground, because I could at least get in a foxhole. But in an F9, man, you went over some of those damn places like Pyongyang, and it was like flying into pepper, or like into a snowstorm. The damn stuff was coming up so damn hard. And how I never got shot down, I'll never know, because a lot of my friends did.
Did your ship ever get hit?
No, it didn't. My plane, no, my plane never got hit. I did. No, when did my friend, you know, I had him get hit right next to me. I'd be flying wing on usually a captain or a major, and they'd get hit, and I'd follow them into K3 to make sure they got in, okay, you know, to be with them till they got in and landed. I was very fortunate.
Can you describe one of those missions that stick out in your mind?
Well, Pyongyang was probably one of the worst, because they had anti-aircraft fire coming out of there that was just like, you just looked like it was snowing, you know, when you were going through a snowstorm. And we lost some people, and one of them we went up to bad weather, and we got up above the Yalu River, and of course the MiGs came pouring out to come after us, and our F9s were not anything at all able to keep up with the MiGs. F-86s could, but not the F9s. And on the way back, a couple of the guys got shot down. Like I say, I'm just a very fortunate person. I don't understand why I never got hit by all that anti-aircraft fire, or never got shot down by the MiGs. Some of the guys did. Friends of mine did.
What was your mission? What were you?
We were bombing Pyongyang, and just dropping bombs all over the place up there that we could, everywhere we could.
Did you shoot any machine guns at the enemy MiGs?
No, I never encountered the MiGs. I was fortunate that I was far enough ahead. Tail and Charlies were the one who got hit back here, but I never got bounced by the MiGs. The worst that I got was just shooting at. Well, we were strafing and shooting everything that we could. But I never got, I was surprised. And in fact, I used to, when I got towards after flying about 75, 80 missions in the F9, well, not afterwards, but during that time, I would go over and fly headquarters squadrons of Corsairs, because I was current in the Corsair, and I used to go up in the Corsair and drop bombs with the Corsair and shoot, you know, and strafe. But boy, that was a completely different case. I mean, where we used to go up in the F9s and get up there in 30 minutes and do our thing, and then come back in another 30 minutes. We'd be an hour and a half mission all told. In the Corsair, it took you an hour and a half to get up there. Then you do your mission, and you an hour and a half to get back home. So you were 3 hours in that damn thing instead of an hour and a half. But I do that just to stay with the Corsair. I loved that old airplane. That was a great airplane.
You mentioned you strafed. Was there any time that you knew that what you were doing were killing folks?
Oh yeah, we were strafing. We were strafing carts and cars and trucks, anything that we could see on the road.
So it was visible. It wasn't.
Oh yeah, it was very visible. In fact, you could get dangerous because these were 20mm shells. That was bigger ones. And you could blow the hell out of all kinds of stuff up there, and they had HEI in them and everything, and you could really tear up jack with them. Some of the guys that get so damn low, they have mud all over the airplane when they came back down. And then they had then the boss get them out there and say, well, okay, you get out there and you wash that damned airplane off, you know. But I didn't get that dangerous. Some of my friends did that. They would get down there and get so damn low. Those 20mm shells with HEI in them can really blow up a lot. You know, they really blow stuff up sky high, and you can fly through it. That's the trouble. But you shouldn't get that low. That was sort of stupid for them to do that.
After you did your 80 missions in the F9, did you go to a different airplane besides the Corsair?
No, not there. No, I came home, and the first thing they did was send me to Pensicola to be a flight instructor.
How long were you in combat in in Korea?
I was there, well,
You did 80 missions.
80 missions. I
80 days.
trying to remember how long I was there. It's a good question. I could look in my logbook.
Okay. But it wasn't any
It was
1 month or
probably
anything.
6 months. I would say.
I see.
Yeah, at least 6 months.
So you came home to Pensacola to be a flight instructor.
Be a flight instructor.
Did you enjoy that?
Sort of. It was hard work. It was you fly 3 and 4 doggone flights a day, and sometimes you'd fly where you just had 1 or 2 students. It'd be one thing, but then I was teaching formation flying, and a lot of times I'd send out anywhere from 4 to 6 students in their airplanes, and I'd have to chase them and tell them what to do and how to do it. And then you had to come back to the base and go in and write up the students' not log books, but their training things, you know, to say how they did. And God, that took all kinds of time to do that, particularly if you had 3 or 4 hops during the day, and some of them with 4 to 6 students, that you had to come back and then write up the doggone things on how they did. And they were long days, and particularly in the summertime when it was hot. And every now and then something would happen out there. Kid would run in front of a doggone one of the props out there and get themselves all chewed up. It was a busy time. I get worn out because of all the flying that I was doing, but boy, I was learning. I was really getting experience at flying. I got so damn good. It got so that I could just take that SNJ and just do almost anything with it.
What's an SNJ?
SNJ is the training airplane that we used then. I don't know whether I've got pictures of them here. I got pictures of them in here if you want to take a look at one of them.
Were they jets or props?
No, they're props.
It's okay.
You could, and you know, you had a student in the front cockpit and yourself in the back most of the time. Sometimes you were in the front and the student was in the back. Or you had the students out there by themselves in their airplanes flying formation, and you were chasing them to tell them what to do and how not to do it, or, you know, do things the right way. And so you'll be tired. You come back and you have to write up all the jackets on those guys to see how they did, to tell how they did them.
How long did you work at that job?
That was almost 2 years.
2 years?
Yeah, it was 2 years. By that time I'd gotten married, and when the hell did I get married? I got married before I went overseas with the F-9s, I think, the 311. But we had a good time. I mean, the wife enjoyed being there in Pensacola, and we've had an awful lot of good friends in Pensacola. Pensacola was a nice area.
Where did you go after Pensacola?
From Pensacola, I went 1952. I went to, well, let me think. I went from Pensacola to where? Oh, I think I went from there to First Anglico in Hawaii, I believe.
What did you do there?
Well, I was an air and naval gunfire liaison officer. We worked with when we went ashore, we provided the support, the radio support, basically, for the Allies, for the Army, or if they were foreign troops, we provided air support for them. Basically, we had our radios, and we were able to communicate with all of the aviation units and vector them in to targets. That's what we did.
So you were still flying, though, right?
I was still flying, yes, but I was in Hawaii, and I used to go out to Barber's Point, where they had airplanes and we could go out and keep our flight time up so that we could stay current, you know.
But you weren't flying combat planes?
Not flying combat. We were flying combat airplanes, but we were not flying in combat there.
When did you end up going to Vietnam?
Oh, good. Well, see, I went to, from there, I went to, from First Anglico, I went to Pax River, Patuxent River, through test pilot school. And that was in 1957. And I spent 2 years there. John Glenn and the rest of the guys that were there. We had, and I was at armament test and was testing all of the weapons and guns and things of that nature. And I was having a great time at armament test after I went through the school, test pilot school. And then later I got into an F-8 squadron, which is that thing up there you see up there with the big long nose on it. That, and then I went from there to where did I go from there? Wow. I went from for goodness sakes. Boy, it's hard to remember. I went from one damn thing to another. I think I went from there to China Lake, California, where they were testing all kinds of ordnance at China Lake. And I was flying the F-8 and the F-4, and we were testing the newest Sidewinder at that time, which was the AIM-9C and D. That was where I had to suit up in the pressure suit and take the F-4 to make one of the flights was to make a flight to as high as I could go in the F-4. We wanted to get above 80,000 feet to see if the new Sidewinder would work at that altitude, would maneuver at that altitude. So I took one up with a captive rocket thing on the one side to use as a target with a flare on it. So I took it up to 85,000 feet in the F-4 and successfully fired it. I fired it and it successfully worked. You know, went out and hit the target. I goddamn near killed myself, but I had 85,000 feet in that pressure suit. And I had to shut the engine off. You have to shut the engine off as you go through 65,000 feet, or the engines burn up. So you coast on up to 85,000 feet, but the engines are turning over enough that you can get power from the generators. I was able to fire the target rocket and then the Sidewinder at 85. And then I leveled off and came on back down and leveled off at 45,000 feet, started the engines up. And I had a slight cold. I should never have done it, been out there, but I had a slight cold. And my ears were plugged up. You know, you've had that happen in an airplane yourself if you've been out probably. My ears plugged up, and of course you want to grab your nose and blow to pop your ears. But to do that in a pressure suit, you got to shut the oxygen off and lift the visor up and get a hold of your nose and blow it, which I did, and it worked. The only thing is I put the visor back down and forgot to turn the oxygen on. And I'm sitting at 45,000 feet without any oxygen. Well, I am very fortunate. I am really a very lucky guy. I knew right away that I was having some problems with oxygen. As soon as I started losing, I started getting a little dizzy, a little woozy. So the first thing I did, which is what I've always done, was push that damn nose over and head downhill just as fast as I could go. And I had told the guy in the back seat, who was a Navy, I don't know what his rate was, I've forgotten, that if I go through 20,000 feet and we're headed downhill pretty fast and you can't communicate with me, then eject out of the airplane. Well, as I started getting down to 25,000 feet or so, there was enough oxygen that I was starting to come to. So I had enough sense to get things under control and level off before I got to 20,000 feet. Thank God he didn't eject. I would really ruined that mission for me to go up there and successfully fire the damn Sidewinder, which is what the whole thing was all about, and come back downhill and that guy and have to eject. But anyway, I got back to the airfield okay, but I was really a lucky. I've been a lucky guy. I have really been a very, very, very lucky guy.
When did you get sent to Vietnam?
Okay, after that, I got sent to Vietnam. I got sent out to Japan to the 1st Marine Air Wing in wow, when was that? In 1961, I believe.
So you were there really
64, early. 61 or 2, huh?
You were there really early.
Yeah, I got out there to Japan and the 1st Marine Air Wing just in time to go into Vietnam with the 1st Marine Air Wing. And we went down to Vietnam in 64 or 65. I can't remember exactly. I think it was 64. We went into Vietnam with the 1st Marine Air Wing. And I was, unfortunately, not with a squadron. I wasn't with one of the flying squadrons. I was a major, and I had a headquarters and maintenance squadron. We set up the tents and got everything organized, the mess halls and everything organized for the wing. And so that was my big job there. I was at DaNang, so we got and all of my buddies were over flying airplanes, and I'm sitting there making sure we got plenty of food and got plenty of places to sleep. Tents that is. Then I went down to I was lucky to go down to what was the airfield south of DaNang on the coast down there?
But again, you weren't flying combat missions.
No, I was not. No. I was going back and forth in the helicopters. God, scared the hell out of me. And getting shot at occasionally, but I was never flying missions, and like all my buddies were over there flying the F-8s and the F-4s. So I spent my whole time down there as a housekeeper. Get the tents all taken care of.
How many tours did you do?
Just the one. I went to
1
Vietnam,
year?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Did your area ever get attacked during that?
Oh yeah, we used to get hit every now and then, and we had our foxholes right outside of our tents, just in case. And they used to bombard us every now and then, and so. But I never, lucky Pierre, I just never got any problem. Had any problems? I don't know. I don't understand it.
Were you glad to be out of that job when you left?
Yes, I was. Where did I go? I went from there. Oh, I think I went from there back to Quantico to go to senior school, so to speak. What they call it? To learn how to be a senior officer, I guess. What the hell? I forget what the command and staff school they call it. Yeah, for lieutenant colonels and majors and lieutenant colonels. So I went back to that. Quantico. I'd never been to Quantico before, so I went to Quantico.
Well, here you are. You had been in the Marines for over 20 years by that time.
Oh, yeah.
Had you ever carried anything for good luck during your entire
No, I sure hadn't. I don't. That's a good question. I never thought about that. No, I never did. I never had any desire or any thoughts about carrying a good luck charm or anything like that.
When you were in Korea, did you see any enemy when you were on the ground?
No, we had them hit our airfield at K3 a couple of times, But
By air attack?
no, they were
They were partisans?
yeah, but nothing. In fact, I'm not sure that we even had that. I remember that we had an explosion when they were working on one of the Corsairs up there, and I'm trying to remember. We did have some. I know we had foxholes outside of our tents, and boy, when something like that would happen, everybody ran for those foxholes, which were full of all kinds of junk because we hardly ever used them, you know.
How about in Vietnam? Did you ever?
Yeah, we had to jump. We had to head for the foxholes out there a number of times because they would bombard us every now and then.
Did you ever see any verified Viet Cong or
No,
NVA?
no, I never did. No.
Did you keep a diary at any time?
No.
During this your career?
No. Now you can tell I didn't. No. No.
Now that you're retired from the military, do you think that your military experience during World War II affected your life any significant way?
Oh, I'm sure it has. I don't know how, but I'm you know, just the experience is something else. But I've never had a reason to exploit it, I guess, for anything. No, I just feel very fortunate that I have been involved in 3 wars and not ever had a scratch. I do not understand it. Somebody's sure been looking after me.
Did you ever join a veterans organization?
No, we have a local Marine group that gets together once a month for lunch and swap lies and stories. But I haven't been to one of them for a while. But we have a group like that of local Marines in this area, both retired regulars as well as a lot of reserve Marines around in this area. So we do get together occasionally, but I've not been involved. I'm not into the what do you call it?
The VFW?
No.
The American Legion?
No.
My son, who's 11 years old and who idolizes you veterans for what you've done for our country, will watch this. And if you had any advice for him from your veterans experience, what would you give him?
I would say get into any one of them, probably. Of course, me, I prefer the Marines, but join up, sign up with the Marines or even the Army, the Navy, or the Air Force. Get that experience as a young man, as an 18-year-old or 19-year-old or what have you. You get that experience, and they will teach you, put you in areas that you may be very interested in, and they'll get you started in something that you may want to do for the rest of your life. Like I got into electronics, and I knew exactly what I wanted to do when I got out. A lot of guys that I knew that were in college didn't know what the hell they wanted to do. They came to college, but they didn't know what the hell they wanted to do. You know, they're just milling around. If you get into the service, you're going to learn something. You're going to learn to do something. You'll get into one job or another. Like I was radio operator, you can get into all kinds of different jobs in the service, and you get experience in something, and you'll then know by the time you're 20 years old, you know exactly what you want to do. And you go to college, you know what the hell you want to get to when you get into college. I say that's the best thing in the world for a young man or a young woman to get into the service and learn something while you're there. And you do. There's no way you can get away from, and you learn, not only that, you learn how to mix with people. I think it's a great experience.
You mentioned how you dropped out of this electronic school so that you could go see combat.
Yeah.
Did you ever regret that?
I can't say that I did because I lucked out. But I did want to be an electrical engineer, and I enjoyed the courses that I was taking at Ohio State. And I think I probably would have gotten into that business, you know, if I hadn't gotten back into the service. But and it gave me a good background in electronics, even at that.
Well, thank you for your interview. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
No, other than the fact I just say, like, get into the service and learn something. When you're young like that, you don't know what the hell you want to do. You get out of high school, you don't know for sure. Maybe some people do. Now, there might be some people that come out of high school and they know exactly what they want to do. But I would say that most people don't, and they need to get the experience of being in the service, where they can learn a job of some sort, and at least learn something, and get experience in something that will be good for them for the rest of their life.
Thank you, Mr. Walker.
You're welcome.